Welcome to the More Podcast with Ava and Najee, where we are manifesting original rich bitch experiences. Each week, we bring you travel reviews, wellness advice, and general millennial musings with a level of refinement. What level? It fucking depends. Welcome to a new week, Ava. We made it.
We made
How are
it.
you feeling? How was your week?
Gosh.
What's going on?
Oh my gosh. It's been a long week since we last chatted. I am in the process of moving, which is always a bit unsettling. And so basically, I moved out of my condo a week ago, and I'm currently staying at my mom's house, which is so sweet and loving of her. But of course, I'm staying at my mom's house. So I'm just a little bit disheveled, and you can see I'm not in my normal office. Branding is off. I've got burgundy backdrops. But it's good because this is essentially one step closer to my final destination, which is London.
London, UK. Gosh, do you know when you're moving yet over across the pond?
ASAP, yesterday. No, probably in like 3 more weeks.
Well, this is super exciting. I'm very excited about your sabbatical, which I mean, it's not the correct use of the word, but it's basically a sabbatical. And I just love it for you. I can't wait to see you over there.
I know, I'm so excited. We're gonna have a blast. And it's not a sabbatical. I'm definitely going to be working.
You're definitely going to be working.
Definitely going to be working. Those London prices can keep me busy.
Listen, that great British pound will not let up. Okay. It will not let up. It let up a little bit during Brexit, but then it said, oh, no, we're back.
We're back. Fooled 40% nobody.
Markup.
Right.
Oh God.
Oh my God. How was your week? What'd you
do? I just got back from a week in Texas.
Oh.
It was my first time in Texas.
Okay.
I went for a work conference, and that was in Dallas. And then I went to Houston to visit one of my really good friends. And I was also able to reconnect with one of my really, really good friends in Dallas, who I haven't seen probably since like early college days.
Oh.
And I hadn't seen my friend in Houston in probably about 3 years. So it's always great to reconnect with friends you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Even if you have to be in Texas. No shade to anyone from Texas. I think Texas is a great state, and a lot of people are from Texas. But you know, it's just not for me.
Not for you. I think that's, and traveling gives you the opportunity, right? Where it's like, you can see if a place is for you or not. Like, how would you know until you go?
Definitely. I think traveling and being able to reconnect with friends also kind of gives you perspective into a lot of new things, especially friends that you've known for a long time, where you're kind of moving in different eras together, and you get to see each other's growth and get to see what each other is thinking about that next era. I think it's just very, very kind of fun and intriguing, interesting, which is why I always really, really value traveling. And I really, really value those connections with friends. So that definitely helped put a lot of things in perspective for me.
And are they still friends? Have you confirmed?
They are still friends. Yes, absolutely.
Love that for you.
Yeah, because you never know these days.
You never know, a season, a reason, a lifetime, that saying. I think it's like, it's nice after a few years to come back and be like, oh, this still feels good, or we're still kind of on, similar path, or we still find value in each other. It's always kind of sad when you like find out the opposite, but I feel like the last, like there have been so many, like the divides have gotten so much greater just through everything we've been through for the last couple of years. And sometimes it's hard to look past certain things.
Right.
So I'm glad that was not the case for you in Texas.
Yes, definitely not the case. Definitely people that I'm going to love forever. I think that is kind of the value and the beauty and authenticity, because you can go through different phases in life, but I like to believe that who you are at your core is going to stay the same in most cases. And that's typically the case with people I find myself having like a really good or deep or genuine connection with. Because as you know, and we've talked about this a lot, life you encounter different phases in life, things that'll change you, things that'll make you different. But I really like to hope that, who I am at my core, who you at your core, um, will basically stay consistent. So luckily that was the case for me and my reconnection with my friends. Thank God.
Well, that's a perfect segue into today's topic because we're
Yes, yes,
talking
yes.
about
T-
personal branding eras.
yes, today is personal branding eras. Branding, sometimes it's a little bit of a scary word to some, and it actually means something a little different to depending on who you're asking. So I want to start with you, Ava. What does personal branding mean to you?
Well, I love this. This is basically what I do for a living.
This is right up your alley.
This is right up my alley. I have lots of thoughts, so get ready. So I think the term personal brand and personal branding in general has become much more popular and prevalent over the last, I don't know, probably 5 years.
Mm,
And I think it's definitely been fueled by social media, like hands down, can't avoid that.
yeah.
But I think it has applications beyond just social. I think it's an interesting vantage point to like view yourself in terms of everything that you stand for, what you love, your story, what you do, how you help other people, the things you like to enjoy for fun. And so I think, personal branding in general or your personal brand is you. It's that simple. And so if you say, well, what does that mean from there? It's literally your life experiences, your story, your desires, your goals, your
Hmm.
interests, all of that rolled up into one. And in my work as a social media coach, this comes to, front and center pretty quickly because I think, the personal brand or who you are is how you connect other people. So, for instance, you and I have a shared interest in travel. Like that's part of who we are. We could say that's part of our personal brands, but it's also what helps us connect as humans and relate on a level of interest that we have, something that we enjoy doing. And it opens the door for communication, connection, community, all those things.
Hmm.
So I think it's everything and it's almost nothing at the same time, if that makes sense.
It's very kind of overwhelming in a little bit. Um, I really connect with your personal brand being who you are. I think, like you said, we definitely share that interest in like travel. We share that interest in wellness, definitely in taking
Mm-hmm.
care of ourselves both mentally and physically. Um, and I know that's some of the things that I like to do. But when it comes to personal branding and the evolution of kind of what that term means, like you said, over the past years, and most people really point to like social media, right? Because that's our own kind of micro platform to share with the world who we are and who that personal brand is. I can tell you sometimes I have struggled with really kind of being able to share how I feel and like what makes me me in a
Mm-hmm.
platform like that, especially when we're starting businesses or we're trying to promote ourselves or something of that nature. And I kind of want to know your thoughts around it. Like, I know I've struggled with it and
Yeah.
you've gone through your own personal journeys with personal branding, but like what are some of your experiences when actually finding out the best way to share what your personal brand is and what matters to you?
Mm-hmm. So when you say that you struggle with it,
Struggle child.
walk me through it. Like, where is it? Is it a struggle through identifying like what those elements are, or is it a struggle to share that from a place that feels vulnerable, or like where do you think that comes in for you?
I think it might be a little bit of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of already talked about how, for me and personal branding, especially today, I'm kind of in an era where I want to start promoting myself a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
branch out and try different things, such as, a podcast. Um,
Hey.
and really kind of share myself a little bit more with, the world and my audiences, because I feel like I enjoy watching some of my friends' updates in their
Mm-hmm.
life And I feel like I have a lot to share as well, even if it's not necessarily promoting a particular product or service.
Mhm.
So I guess it's a little bit of kind of struggling to be like, okay, well, what do I share and how best to express it in a very authentic way? Because I think
Mhm.
all that is wrapped up in what personal branding is, both the selection of whatever your brand is and the expression of it to try to get it
Yeah.
to kind of connect with your audiences.
Ooh, the selection and the expression. I
All
love
that.
that. You just said that. That's you. I think, the selection piece of it, and for me, the selection piece of it has really come through like a lot of reflection, a lot of self reflection, a lot of literally being like, who the fuck am I? Because I think that we have certain moments or maybe periods of our lives where we feel like we are really clear on what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we're working towards. And as those things happen, you kind of come to a crossroads where you're like, well, what's next? Where do I go from here? But I think, the whole time it's like, well, why am I doing this? Is this something I enjoy? Is this aligned to my ultimate goals? And so I think the selection piece came, at least for me, from a lot of self reflection. And I mean, quite literally a few years of going really internal, where I was actually sort of self isolating and meditating and reflecting and working with
Mm,
a life coach. And like I was doing all these things because it was a journey that I chose at the time because I felt very frustrated. I felt like after 10 years in corporate America, I felt like I didn't know who I was. And I felt like I was disconnected from joy, honestly. And so for me, it was a moment of being so fed up with just not having that clarity and really wanting to do the self work as someone who loves to study. It's like, well, what can I dig into and how can I really figure this out for myself? So I think that selection piece comes from a lot of reflection of like, okay, who am I? Where have I been? What's my story? And, everyone has more than one story, but it's like looking to those moments in your life that have really defined you and then saying, like, okay, well, how does this relate to where I'm going in the future? And it's not something that is just like, boom, you could spend a few hours and you're like, I know who I am, or I know how to define myself. And I think that's okay, but there's so much conversation about, around social about just being like so niche. It's like pick a thing, do one thing,
mhm,
grow,
mhm.
grow one skill, excel in one area, and then branch out. And I honestly hate that.
Mm.
It's so unrealistic when you look at how we are as human beings. We're very multifaceted. So I think, there's a conversation that's very limiting that's happening right now. And that's where I think a lot of the tension around like, well, what is my personal brand? And you know, can I share this or can I talk about that? And it's like, of course you can. That's your life. The
Mhm.
personal brand is actually much more flexible than most people think. So I don't know. I think my selection really started with a lot of just isolating and being like, I want to find my purpose. Like, I want to make a huge change in my life because I don't like where I'm heading. I'm not
Right.
fulfilled. And through that, over time, and it's always evolving too, right? It's like over time, I'm trying on new things or, you could think of it as like trying on different pieces of clothing. It's like what fits, what feels good, what doesn't, like what really highlights your best assets, if you will, and like
Mhm.
what doesn't flatter you. And so I think that's once you become like aware of that process, I think that's something that happens over time forever. Um, but then, to your point of the expression, that's the other side of it. And everyone has a different purpose really for expressing. Um, for me as an entrepreneur, it's definitely part of how I grow my personal brand, my business is by showing up and by sharing online. I
Mhm.
think 90% of my current clients I've connected through social media with.
Mhm.
And so for me, the expression really comes down to there's a quote that I love, and I don't know who said it, but I repeat the quote all the time. And it goes, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows what you know. Meaning, it doesn't matter how many people you're connected with, your network, this or that, if you're not telling them quite literally like what your goals are, what you do, how you can help, from a personal interest perspective or from a professional perspective. And so when you translate that, at least to social media, which is one of the easiest access points for us all to express our personal brands, it's quite literally telling people how you can help, what you like to do, what you're looking for, um, and really just bringing people along for the ride that is your life.
I love that. It kind of sounds like a lot of this, especially in the selection process of, hey, who am I? What do I want to share? A lot of it sounds like it's a little bit of a trial and error period. Like you're kind
Totally.
of picking something, you're trying something, you're kind of thinking through things, especially, I mean, and this can happen at any stage of life. I was going to say, especially when you're younger, but to be honest, it can definitely happen when you're in your 40s and 50s too, when you're kind of exploring what this new phase of life is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one thing I like to always say with trial and error periods is to never be afraid to get started and take action. And I always need to take my damn advice all the time. But like if you are in that trial and error phase of figuring out what that brand is in this current era that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
just share like a couple different things, see kind of what sticks and what feels most you. Because just taking that action and getting started is always going to be the hardest part. So the sooner
Amen.
you get that out the way, then you can really start like trialing and tweaking,
Mm-hmm.
trying and tweaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll eventually kind of fall into your rhythm. But the sooner you get started, the easier that process is. Um, I do like when you say that it's just a very kind of authentic experience trying to figure out exactly what that brand is and how best to share it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a different journey for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I I myself have had a couple of different jobs, haven't really started my own business, still trying to get keep up with all the changes in social over the
Mm-hmm.
past X amount of years. Um, and I find myself wanting to try different things as well. So honestly, I know a lot of people that are kind of on this journey, and I'm just like, I'm right there with you. They're trying out different content pieces, they're trying to promote themselves, and I just love to see it. I love to see it. And people go through those different eras,
Mm-hmm.
from single party girl to mom of the year to
Maybe for
entrepreneur.
right. I'm like, I don't know if that's either of us, but yes, from party
Listen,
mom to mom or well, party girl to mom of the year. That's so funny.
it's on my
I
Facebook timeline.
don't scroll back too far. Isn't it funny that we used to upload like 60 pictures to a Facebook album every weekend?
Yeah, isn't funny how we had to post a picture on Twitter from a different app?
Oh my God. Isn't it funny
Hashtag
how
twit pig.
how we remember all of these you know, generation one eras of social apps? That's kind of frightening.
Yeah, when I think about a lot of these things, I feel so seasoned.
Seasons.
I feel very seasoned.
And
Um,
I value you for your seasoned approach.
listen, those seasoned approaches come with a lot of experiences in my 19 years of life.
Right.
So
Yes, exactly. I love that. So, okay, for you, if you could think about your personal brand eras. And so eras is okay, so I want to back up 1 second. I have generally three rules when we talk about personal branding eras.
mhm. And what are they?
The first one being everyone has a personal brand. It is you. And that's what I think we just chatted about.
Hmm.
The second one is that everyone has the ability to change their personal brand at any point.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then to follow that up, number three is that change and evolution is natural. And I think
definitely.
this is where we face the most resistance because change can be scary and it can be ushering in a level of unknown. And
Hmm.
I think that there are some people, some personalities that are really more excited about evolution and change, and there are certain personalities or people who want everything to stay the same. So like if I think about people in my life, it's like, well, this person is always, taking on something new or trying something or like, always switching things up. This person I know is like using the same coffee mug for the last 10 years. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's like, what's that level of comfort with change?
yeah.
And I think that a lot of times the people probably closest to us, or at least this is how I felt, is like sometimes the people closest to me feel the most um, almost triggered by evolution, right? Because I'm not the same. I'm not doing, I don't have the same job as I used to. Like they're trying to almost recalibrate in their own relationship to me. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I think it's really interesting because to your point earlier of your friends that you just saw for the first time in a few years, it's like
Yeah.
you are all still in sync because you've connected at this more authentic, deeper level of like at the
Yeah.
core of who you are authentically.
Hmm.
Whereas sometimes people come into your life at different points where it's like surface level. I can think of one
Okay.
example is like, okay, my corporate friends, right? The people that I was friends with when I worked my corporate job, like love them, but we were existing in a moment in time together or a situation together
Yeah.
where we shared commonalities.
Hmm.
Now I don't work there anymore. It's not that I don't love those people and maybe we catch up on occasion, but it's different. So we can't bond or resonate over X, Y, and Z that happened at the office. Or, you know what I mean? Like it just
Right.
feels different.
Uh-huh.
So I think the change that comes along with having different eras uh, is the trickiest piece of all of it. A lot of people are, or at least my clients, it's like when I work with people, it's like, well, am I going to confuse people if I start talking about my new hobby? Am I going to confuse people if I start sharing about my new business or my new career change? And it's like, you might confuse people. Yeah. But so what? This is you now. And so I think when you think about eras, that's where the change piece comes in that I think is probably the most resistant part of this whole topic.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's almost like not only is it a little bit of hesitation internally to kind of try something new and put yourself out there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit of hesitation externally, understanding how, people who you're close with or your network might react to it, and thinking about that and like internalizing what that experience might be, but also thinking about, okay, well, how are they actually going to react to it? And
Right.
I do like what you said about it can be confusing, but at the end of the day, the shelf life of anything on social media is literally like 3 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep being consistent in what you're doing, people will literally forget what you used to do and they'll just accommodate to like the new you and exactly
Mm-hmm.
like where you are now. And even beyond that, the people who you are like intrinsically and authentically connected with, ideally your core friends and your family, they're going to rock with you regardless. And they're going
Mm-hmm.
to applaud the changes and probably they're going to learn from it too. And that's just another person to celebrate with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. So I want to give an example of eras, and then I want to hear about yours.
Okay.
So cute. So I think the best way to illustrate this is, and what I really notice a lot of is this evolution in music artists, for
Hmm.
example. So in the music industry, like if someone has a career of any length of time, you will notice that with every essentially new album, they're presenting a new era. Like they have gone through a personal evolution, a rebrand, and the prior album looks nothing like the current album. So, you know how much I love Ariana Grande,
Love her.
Queen. So we'll use
She's
her as an
everything.
example. Everything. So right now, she's in her Positions era. That's her most
Hmm.
recent album. It dropped. And before that, she was in her Thank You Next era. Very different, but reflective of where she was in her life. So
Hmm.
now, currently, she's glowing, beautiful bride, married woman, singing about love. Thank You Next era was like savage, fuck you. I'm even go buy diamonds for all my best friends because who needs a man?
Who is she married to?
His name is Dalton. I don't know.
How long have they been married?
Oh, like a year?
Congratulations to her. Wow.
Congrats, Ari. We didn't get our invites though. Isn't that
Yeah,
weird?
I know. I don't like that.
I
Maybe we'll
don't like
get
that.
invited to the anniversary party.
Let's hope. But I think it's so interesting because each album and each era is reflective of a moment in time in her life. And it's sonically different, it's visually different. Uh, she's wearing different clothes, she's talking about different things, she has different energy.
Hmm.
And in the music industry, like that is celebrated. That is exciting. It keeps things fresh. And we could go back and back and back, right? Like every album is a different era. So I look at that and I say, that's actually really freeing. Like, if Ari's eras are all completely different and she still has this massive, loyal fan base, why can't that apply to my life?
Mm.
It gives
Hmm.
a level of
Hmm.
freedom to say, yes, I'm not a music artist. I wish I could sing, but what does this look like in my life? And how can I really breathe into that? Change is natural, evolution is natural, even though the people around me may not understand what I'm doing or why, or have their own fears about, where we stand as I continue to evolve. Continue to lean into like what feels true to you now. And I think that's really the eras. And so when you think about what triggers these, I think it's like those bigger moments. So new job, for example, moving to a new city,
Yeah.
being in a new relationship,
Hmm.
being fresh off of a breakup.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Ooh.
we've all had a few of those, right?
Yes.
But it's like, picking up a new hobby. Like these can all be triggers for entering a new era. And I think that's really cool.
I love that. And I think that's absolutely right. Like I said, there's plenty of triggers for kind of moving into this new phase of life. I know that for me, I don't know. Like if I was to actually sit here and think about my eras, um, it would be a little all over the place.
That's okay.
It'd be a little all over the place. But I feel like I would definitely recognize growth. Like for example, when I was in high school, I kind of fell into really getting into, I was a thespian,
Mm.
and I take very great pride in that to this day. At work, when I'm at work, I tell people I used to be a thespian, okay? So I'm a pro at this.
Respect.
Um, and that was a lot of fun. Actually, one of my friends that I saw in Dallas, we used to spend almost every day together because we were doing the shows in high school and we were in chamber choir together. So we spent like every day together. And that's, I guess, how I got to really understand the core of who he was. And that really hasn't changed. So there was still a lot of commonalities when we were able to reconnect and just catch up on what has happened in the past
Mhm.
10 years of life. Um, but yeah, I was a thespian. I was having a lot of fun. I was grossly insecure. But who isn't in those teenage years?
Baby
And
Najee.
long time ago, long time ago, not as long ago was college. And I feel like that era really felt like good girl gone bad Rihanna.
Say more.
It was bold, it was edgy. I was probably my most outwardly confident that I've ever been, which was a complete and stark difference than what I came from. But it was something that I was also seeking
Mm,
actively. So that worked out. You know, colleges has its ups and has its downs. Afterward, I kind of was able to kind of internalize a lot of that confidence in a way that didn't feel as forced. And it became more of like a quiet but very kind of bold and strong confidence where I kind of carried that into really starting my career, which was a little bit of a rocky start. But it got started and it was great. And I feel like from that, which was probably age 24-ish, all the way up until maybe 29, 30, that would be like another era of just trying to build a career, get some experience under my belt, and not just like professional experiences, but life experiences as well.
mm.
Not to mention, I was in a very long term relationship at the time. And then probably around 29-ish, a lot of that like just snapped. It like the trigger was the end of that relationship and the end of a quote unquote dream job that I thought I had.
Mm.
And I remember on that day, Ava, that I got fired from my dream job.
Hmm.
And I was walking out that door. I was relieved that it was over because it was like a pretty long, like 7-month process of me getting fired. And I was like, I don't know how, but this is going to propel me into my next phase of life.
Hmm.
And it's going to be amazing. Lo and behold, it did not happen immediately, but it did happen. And that, I'll say, those experiences at almost 29, getting fired from my dream job and losing my long term relationship,
Hmm.
really helped me get to where we are today, even having this conversation about personal branding, putting yourself out there, trying new things,
Hmm.
and really being on the path to live your most authentic life and being unapologetic about it.
Hell yeah.
So, when it comes to those eras, I feel like I am in this new era now from being kind of like that insecure teenager to an oversecure college student to leveling that out career person to now trying to kind of go into like this era of doing my own thing and carving my own path and really kind of tossing aside a lot of these ideals that we were brought up on when it comes to making money and
Hmm.
business and how to conduct yourself and XYZ PDQ and really trying to find what is most authentic to me. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because I need to hear it's okay to confuse people. It's okay to try different
Mm.
things, no matter
Yeah.
what age, because eventually you're going to fall into like what it is that feels right to you during that phase. And I'm in a new phase, so I'm open to trying those new things.
Enter the pod.
Enter the pod and whatever else might come afterward. Manifesting those original rich bitch
Hell
experiences.
yes.
That's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. I love that. And I don't think we ever talked about 29 before because like 29 was a big breaking point year for me too. That was
Oh my
what,
gosh.
2019, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait,
Speak
we
on
had our
it.
breakups in the same year. So that's when I went internal for like 3 years on my
Mm,
journaling shit.
that's right.
Yeah.
I know that's right. You know, I've been journaling since I was 14 years old.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's how
That's
I
very
haven't jumped off a
healthy.
cliff yet.
That's very healthy. Who taught you to journal?
Um, Nobody. I just started writing. I had a lot of feelings. I was an emo kid. Yeah, insecure emo
Thespian in you
teenager.
just it's the expression on the page.
Definitely.
I love that. That's okay. So I hear like four kind of core eras.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of, and like obviously there's childhood, but I think that's so hard to contextualize in many ways. It's like childhood is basically kind of how we are, who we are. But it's
Yeah,
also not like we
exactly.
have to like conscious, like now I'm in my kindergarten era. You know what I mean?
Right. I even find it hard to kind of like contextualize being a teenager because
Mm,
that time frame is like all over the place. But I do remember specifically being insecure, having a good time when I kind of found my people, and it just being a blur and me wanting it to be over.
yeah.
I don't think I'd go back.
No. Oh my God, no. I feel like I probably had about four too. So I think the first kind of real era, if you will, was like my student era. And I would definitely group like last year of high school, all of college, and then you grow into grad school because I was like so clinging to my student identity that I'm like, let's keep this party going. But I
Mm.
think a lot of that was like I defined myself through being more intellectual. I was like, I didn't play
Mm.
sports. I also wasn't a thespian. It wasn't offered at my high school. Um,
Oh.
so it was like I kind of defined myself in that phase as like through academia, through learning, through higher education. And I think a lot of that I was influenced by my grandmother, who
Mm.
was a teacher and really kind of encouraged me to go to grad school and some other things. But I think I also like I hung around there in that era, if you will, for a while because again, it was what felt comfortable to me. It was the way I viewed myself, and I wasn't really like sure what was next. But then,
Mhm.
your millennial finally got a job
Ugh.
after graduating from college, which was
Ooh.
not a walk in the park. I swear to God, I applied to like 108 jobs.
We had it tough.
108.
We
It
really
was
had it
rough.
tough coming up. Yeah.
It was rough. But then I started my corporate, well, wait, in between that, I had my pageant girl era. So I was a beauty queen for like, no joke, 3 years. 18 to 21 was pageant girl era.
So like, wait, what pageants were you in?
I competed in Miss Minnesota USA, which is like the state version of Miss USA. And then I competed in a different one called America's Perfect pageant.
Oh.
And that one is where I had a little success. And so it was so fun. It was actually a hobby I picked up. I was working at a hair salon in high school, and the owners of the salon were really plugged into the local pageant circuit, if you will. So they did like a
Hmm.
lot of hair and makeup for contestants, this type of thing. And they basically like signed me up for my first pageant. So this was not like toddlers and tiaras. Like we don't go back that far. This era was strictly age 18 to 21.
That's so funny.
But
Did
I
you enjoy it?
competed. Yeah, I competed in my first pageant and I did not even place in like the top 25 or whatever. Um, but I remember that feeling of like, wait, I need that fucking crown. Because like once I have a goal in mind, it's like, sorry to everyone else, it's like hell bent, gotta get there. So I competed in this other system called America's Perfect Pageant. Um, came first runner up in that one, lost by 1 point. Also didn't
Mm,
sit well with me.
mm,
Went back the next year and won, and then I
mhm.
retired. I got the crown and I retired. But it's so funny because when people don't know that about my past, they'll look at me and they'll be like, you don't seem like a pageant girl based on whatever perceptions they have, right? Whatever stereotypes they have. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I'm not now, but I was then.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to that evolution of we can be a lot of different things, maybe not all at the same time. But man, if you gave me a pair of those 6-inch heels and a runway and some music, I would still fucking kill it.
I know that's right.
I'd be out
I
there
know
strutting my
that's
stuff.
right.
I'm sure a
Listen,
lot of people would like to see it. You know what I mean? It's like
you can take the girl out the pageant, but you can't take the pageant out the girl.
exactly.
Okay. And
Exactly.
that each one of those experiences kind of becomes a part of you
Right.
and helps you kind of lead to that next phase of life. It's all just a
Totally.
collection of experiences.
It is. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what was different in that era, for example? It's like the way I dressed was different. The way I wore a ton of makeup in that era. I'm not wearing any makeup now. I was like over accessorized. Like it was all things that I loved at the time, but it's like
Mhm.
now it's like I have, a little PTSD. I'm like, I can't do the rhinestones. I can't do any more
You can
rhinestones.
only do too much bedazzle, only too much, like only so
Literally,
much.
someone take away my glue gun. Can't handle it. But then, okay, so then there's a pageant girl era. Then we got to the corporate Ava, and she
Mhm.
stuck around for a long time. That was about a decade. That was a decade of um, achieving, ladder climbing, aspiring, like it was a very like kind of felt like I was in like a machine.
Got you.
And I think a lot of people have like that kind of feeling in the corporate setting if you stick around long enough because you get into the funnel of like, well, what does success mean here? And
It's
you
the
look
rat
around,
race.
right? You look around,
Yeah.
it's the rat race, it's the ladder climb, it's the promotions, it's the this, it's the that, it's the title changes. Um, But in 2020, when I decided to unplug from that era, I had a massive identity crisis because I wore that as just like, that was like my, like, you know, it was my armor. It was
Mhm.
like my whole personality. And obviously that's problematic because that meant my entire life was my job. And I think
Oof.
that's a lot of where I think that's where a lot of the like self reflection started because I wanted to find something that felt more meaningful to me. And that's, I think, what kind of started my self exploration and reflection and more more of the selection process that we spoke about and
Yeah.
the a different expression,
Okay.
which now is like I'm in my entrepreneur era slash international girl era.
And you said 2020 kind of helped trigger that. Did the pandemic had
Mhm.
anything to do with it?
Yes. Well, there's a couple things that happened in 2020. One, I achieved the job title goal that I had set
Mm,
out for myself
yes.
9 years prior. So I felt like I kind of got to the top of the ladder in terms of like what it meant to be a social media employee in corporate America.
Right.
And but when I got there, I realized I'm like, well, why doesn't this feel great? I've been wanting this for so long. Why don't I feel, it's like celebrate for a day and then you're like, well shit, it's just the same old thing every single day.
Right.
So that happened. Pandemic happened. I didn't decide to exit corporate until September of 2020. So
Yeah.
we rode through the first very heavy wave of the pandemic.
Mhm.
I had an awesome social media team. They absolutely killed it. Social was like one of the only channels that brands could continue to communicate with their customers through. So it was like a very hectic time, but it was more so, I think, sitting in that moment of being like, what does my life mean to sit on this laptop for 10, 12, 14 hours a day and then go to bed, can't leave the house. I think there was a lot of elements of pandemic that essentially like pushed me into the new phase, but it was very like, this is hell. I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. And here you are now, entrepreneur era slash
Yes.
international girl, really
Yes.
carving her own path, trying new things, and seeing kind of what comes to it. I think that
Mm-hmm.
kind of really helps sum up like what we've
Mm-hmm.
been talking about, like when it
Yeah.
comes to personal branding, trying different things and not being afraid to like confuse anyone or even confuse yourself sometimes, because sometimes you just have to really work through that stuff. You just have to be brave enough to do the work. Got to be brave
Yes.
enough to do the work, but also just kind of really sit within yourself and what does it mean to like be you and really advocate for what's important to you and express that. And just not being afraid of
Hmm.
change at the end of the day, because just like Ariana and going through her many different phases and eras of
Hmm.
her life, from being kind of like a single rich bitch to a married rich bitch,
Yep.
and everything in between. We go through our own phases and eras in life. And it's okay to change it up and switch it up. Just be
Yes.
authentic to who you are. And that's really kind of at the core. Who you are is your personal brand.
Hmm.
Um, and that's really what it is. Simple as that.
Exactly. And I think this just this really represents a core pillar of our values as a
Oh,
duo,
definitely.
as a pod, where it really is about leaning into the things that make you feel more you. And I'm proud of us.
I am too. I mean, there's a lot more to come, and we're just kind of in the early middle part of what this journey is. And we'll see what else comes. I mean, like I said, people change and rebrand up until their 50s, 60s, 70s. So life is a journey. Enjoy it. Kick back and enjoy it. And that's what I tell me and my friends all the time.
All the time. And me and all my friends all the
Like I said,
time.
I have to tell myself these things all the time because I'm hard-headed and I don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
It's a
Anyway,
problem. But I think, we all need those reminders. Like the advice that we give other people is like we need to hear that ourselves always.
definitely.
Okay, so it's time for love it or leave it.
Love it or leave it. Yay.
Love it or leave it. What are you loving this week, Najee?
What am I loving this week? I am loving that the unofficial start of the summer has happened this weekend.
Mm.
So Memorial Day weekend, as most of you know, is the unofficial start of the summer, and things start to get crazier and crazier from there. I'm more of a fall baby myself, but I love the energy that summer gives because people are more willing to be outside. The fashions are brighter, and there's just a lot more kind of transient nature happening with people traveling and things like that. And I always
Mm.
like to see that. I always like to see that. I always like to see new people. So that's definitely something that I am loving.
Hmm. I love that too. I like the transient nature of like people are just they're out of hibernation, especially up here in the Midwest. It's like you don't see
Hmm.
humans for like several months, and all of a sudden everyone's outside wearing shorts in May. But I love that point about transient because it does feel like, the classic summer road trip. Like people are like just well, and I guess a lot of people have like work off too if you have like a seasonal kind of like teachers and people like
Oh
that.
yes, my sister's a teacher and she's off all summer, so I'm sure she'll be outside.
She's got her hot girl summer coming.
Listen, I called her yesterday and she was out. I was like, I knew she'd be out. I love that for her. Like, I love it.
Oh my God. What are we leaving this week?
The state of Texas. We
Ooh.
are leaving the state of Texas this week. So as I said earlier, I was just in Texas for about a week, and while I was there, 19 students unfortunately lost their lives due to gun violence. And in that same week, the state of Texas hosted an NRA convention. So
Mm-mm.
by the end of the week, I was pretty sick of the state overall. And the thing about Texas is it's one of those deep red states that have a lot of like really big kind of liberal leaning cities. I mean, it's no different from like your Georgia or your Florida or your Pennsylvania, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
issue with Texas is that it's just a lot bigger. So there's a
Mm.
lot more bullshit happening there. And I can say at least like Georgia and Pennsylvania are like purplish. And Florida is just another story. But Texas is too big to be having all that bullshit. So that's what we're leaving this week.
Mm. Yeah, it's been heavy. It's been really heavy. I
I
also don't understand like I don't understand why anyone needs a gun.
I mean, 1 + 1 = 2. I feel like this is pretty common sense. But just this country, Texas, and the politics are just absolutely terrible. So,
What a
whew,
time. I feel you. That could be a whole other that could be a whole other pod. I'll just hold my
I
other
know.
opinions.
Another conversation for another day.
Exactly.
But that is my love it or leave it. Ava, what are
Okay.
you loving and leaving this week?
I am loving Harry's House. Harry Styles. I was not a fan.
The new album,
Yeah, the
yes.
new album. I was not a fan. Like, I never listened to him in the band, like, whatever, whatever. But, like, all of a sudden, you know, when you just gravitate towards certain music, like,
Yeah.
randomly? I'm in my Harry's House phase. It's so good. It's pop music, but it feels like a little, I don't know if it's like a little indie, but
Mm-hmm.
it's great and it makes me happy. And I've been listening to it nonstop all week long, which is great. In terms of what we're not loving, the suburbs. I, like I said, I've been kicking it in the burbs with my mom, which is fine. But you know, I think there's something about, I don't know, like I'm a city girl. Like there's just so much like heart and soul and like a variation in life. Like there's
It's a lot
just
of
so much going
culture
on.
there. Yeah.
Culture. I
Culture and
need the
character, I would
culture.
say.
Like,
Definitely.
and if we're gonna pinpoint one thing for now, just one thing that I'm hating about the burbs, it's like I walked by this pond that was a man-made pond and it had a fountain in the middle. And I just looked at it, I'm like, that is so fucking stupid. Like it's so fabricated and it's fake. Like there are over 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. Like we don't need to be making like man-made ponds with a fountain. The vibe is just off. I don't
It's
trust
not your
it.
jam.
It's not
Definitely
my
not your
jam.
jam.
It's not my jam.
Like, let's get this girl to London ASAP.
Put me, yeah, drop me in central London.
Do you know where you're staying in London yet?
No, I don't want to talk about it.
Oh my God, Ava. All right. We'll talk about this afterward. But Harry's house, I love. I've always loved Harry. I've always loved One Direction. And I think he is actually a really great and unique artist that we
Yeah,
do need right now. Really great example for the kids too. Shout out to him.
I agree. Shout out to Harry. Harry, if you know of any rooms for rent in London, um, let me know.
We're coming to see you, Harry.
Coming to see you. Love that. Anything else?
Hmm. Nope, I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us. It would be super helpful. And tune in every Wednesday to hear the things that make us more us and discover a thing or two to make you more you.
Bye.
Bye.